Hello, this is Robert Rickover at Body Learning, and today my guest is Cecile Rayner, who's an Alexander Technique teacher in Brookline, Massachusetts. That's just outside of Boston. She's been teaching for over 20 years, works with a wide variety of students of all ages. She is also a certified Thai yoga therapist. And today we're going to talk a little about some of the connections, perhaps, or relationships between the Alexander technique and Thai yoga, and maybe how the Alexander technique could be useful for people who are studying Thai or teaching Thai yoga.
hmm
Cecile, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Robert.
Well, it's good to have you on again. I think this is our fourth or fifth interview.
Yeah.
We're getting pretty good at it by now. So this time around, I'm going to ask you first to give a short description of the Alexander technique, and then I think for people who are listening who may know a little about Thai yoga or maybe not know much at all about it, uh, I'll ask you to follow that up with a short description of Thai yoga.
Okay. Well, the Alexander technique is a form of mind body work that helps people reclaim effortless postural balance. And we achieve that by learning to um, let go of harmful habitual pattern of body and mind.
hmm And it's applicable to just about any activity you do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And an activity that some people are doing is teaching and studying Thai yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just say a word or two about what that process is.
Okay. First of all, when I trained as a Thai yoga therapist a few years ago, it came in very naturally to me because I had 20, lots of years of Alexander and working with the body. And it's so there's such an overlap between the two. They have different goals and they have differences, but there's an overlap. And so it just came in very easily to me. But what is it? Thai yoga is also called lazy man's yoga.
Oh, I like that.
Because basically, in receiving Thai yoga massage, one is also receiving the benefits of the practice of yoga, but the practitioner is doing all the work.
Oh, I
Uh,
like that a
yeah.
lot. Oh, that sounds like my kind of yoga.
Yeah, and so this technique has been described as assisted hatha yoga, and a Thai yoga massage incorporates martial arts moves, rhythmic motion, palming and thumbing along energy lines, gentle stretching, and breath work, creating a slow flowing dance around and with the recipient's body. But the recipient is very passive, really, and the practitioner is very much uh, doing in a non-doing way. It's the practitioner is supposed to use all of his body to affect all of the other person's body, and it's very common to say that if the a practitioner does something that doesn't feel comfortable, it's not going to be comfortable for the patient, and vice versa. And if it feels good to the practitioner, it's going to feel good to the person who receives it.
hmm
And what I could add in addition is in addition to stretching and tonifying the muscles, Thai yoga massage improves circulation. It relieves muscular tension and spasm. It helps expedite metabolism. It boosts the immune system and balances the body energetically, inducing a calm and mental state. So, it's quite a workout, but it not in the traditional sense where muscles are doing something, because neither the practitioner nor the receiver are going to use excess tension if it's done well.
Right. Well, listening to the way you describe it and not having had any experience myself,
Hmm?
it kind of sounds like it's um, closer in some ways to massage therapy, but a very specific kind of massage therapy. Would that be a fair description of it, or am I missing something?
Well, I mean, I choose to be called a Thai yoga therapist, and that's what my degree says. But a lot of people call it Thai yoga massage therapy.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a form of massage. But the difference is that a massage could be given just to feel good, you know?
Hmm.
And so somebody, just the magic of touch.
Hmm.
And then you have a therapeutic massage. You have different kind of massage. Of course, you have deep massage, light massage. But Thai yoga is very unique in the sense that um, the goal is not just to make somebody feel good, although that happens anyway, but the goal, it's really more of a healing modality. It's really the practitioner is stimulating all the energy lines in the body to create that the benefit that you get from. And for somebody who has a yoga practice, it helps them extend their comfort zone with their yoga postures without forcing, which is what people do when they want to expand their comfort zone.
Hmm. So you're saying people who are doing some form of, well, I guess we could call ordinary yoga or
Yeah.
different
Hmm.
standard yoga,
Yeah. Yeah.
if they were to study some Thai yoga, they
Mm.
could do their regular yoga more efficiently. Is that more
Yeah.
effectively?
Yes, except I would change one word. It's not, it wouldn't be study. I mean, unless they become a practitioner
Right.
themselves. When they come, they're not really studying, they're just benefiting from the work I do. However, being an Alexander Technique teacher, then I can say that those who are interested do learn because as I'm doing Thai yoga, I can feel if what's in the way, so I can ask them to use their mind to release certain parts, and so I definitely include my Alexander in as much as the person there is interested, and they can definitely learn from the experience. But
Hmm.
it's not a necessarily component normally of Thai yoga. Thai yoga is just a, a giving, a healing modality, and the idea is to actually it's a mix. Somebody said it's a mix between yoga, Ayurveda, and meditation.
Hmm.
And the whole idea is for the practitioner to practice metta, which is loving compassion. So you're really giving from the heart to the person who's receiving. So it has a dimension that's not in Alexander, and that is definitely different than yoga because when you do your own yoga, you're just practicing your asanas and
Hmm. Hmm. So I could certainly imagine how the Alexander technique would be helpful for someone, a practitioner of Thai yoga, and maybe we should, in a moment, talk a little about
yes.
that. But how about for someone who is the recipient?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds a little like, from what you're saying, that the recipient basically, I believe you used the word passive.
Yes.
Um, so is there a way that they could make that passiveness more effective using the Alexander technique, or
Oh,
how does that
yes.
come into play?
Yeah, so absolutely. And they're passive in a non-doing way. It doesn't mean that they don't you know there is such a wide variety of posture that could be used for Thai yoga. It all depends on the recipient's condition, habitual practice. So some I tend to focus on the healing dimension of it, very relaxing Thai yoga. But I can, and when I do exchange with colleagues, I can do things that are a little more energetic. You can
Hmm.
use Thai yoga with more energy, and then you can take somebody into a cobra. You can take somebody upside down. But all
Right.
this is done through releasing. When I do something and I end up having people being on their head or whatever, and I'm supporting them, I'm releasing their weight through my feet, so I'm not doing it muscularly. But
Right.
anyway, so I do guide them, yeah, with their mind. Like I say, if I notice there's some, I'm working with their hip joint and I feel like they're holding, so I use my Alexander and I give them thoughts they can use to help the release happen.
Right. But
And I'm
if someone is taking Thai yoga from a therapist who's not particularly trained in Alexander work,
mhm,
can would some Alexander training for the recipient of that be useful, and if so, in
yes.
what way?
Yes, because since it's a form of work that, especially if you do it to expand your comfort zone, there are moments where you're going to be challenged to go a little past your comfort zone. So if you know Alexander, you can use, even if your teacher, the therapist doesn't know it, you can use your own Alexander to go into that further release, or to make sure that, if they take you in Cobra, that you're releasing the front of your hip joint and you go into a curve instead of collapsing your head back. Yes, knowledge of Alexander would greatly enhance the benefit people get from both yoga or Thai yoga.
I mean, I'm trying to connect this with my own experience. I don't
Yeah.
have a lot of experience with massage, but a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. And certainly there are times lying on the table when I can sense in myself a kind of a muscular
Mm-hmm.
resistance to
Mm-hmm.
something that I know I would be better off if I could let go of that. And the
Mm-hmm.
Alexander technique certainly is a very, very powerful way to do that, even if the
Mm-hmm.
massage therapist has no idea what you're doing.
Exactly.
Um, and the other area where it's very different in many ways, but maybe in some ways not so different. I have a lot of experience with cranial sacral work, receiving
Mm-hmm.
it, not
Mm-hmm.
giving it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found in that work, which is primarily energetic, although sometimes there is some actual
Yeah.
pressure, that if I think some useful Alexander thoughts, like I'm not compressing myself or
Yeah.
not tensing myself, it in a sense allows the therapist to, well, allows both of us to achieve what we want more effectively.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
I guess it's the same kind of thing with Thai yoga.
It is, and really, Robert, we know as Alexander Technique teachers that there are no activity that could not benefit from
Mm,
Alexander work. I mean, um, yeah, I haven't found anything that couldn't benefit from it.
right.
Alexander thinking, even being at the acupuncturist, you're not moving much, but you have all those needles there, and if you know how to release into your space, you're going to be much more comfortable, and
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
you're
That is another area I have some experience in,
yeah,
and
and you're
yeah.
gonna
Hmm.
your thinking will promote the what's happening with acupuncture, which is encouraging the flow of things. So
Right. Now, for someone listening to this podcast who's a Thai yoga therapist, maybe it would be useful to say a word or two about how the technique, how some exposure to the Alexander technique could make their life easier and possibly make their work a little more effective.
yeah, and I mean, what happens is that often people bring to Thai yoga their habitual pattern that they have when they do yoga. It's very common. A lot of Thai yoga. Again, I stand out in the crowd because most people doing Thai yoga have come from a yoga background, whether they
Hmm.
were teaching it or practicing it. Whereas that wasn't the case in my for me.
Hmm.
So, but. they bring their misuse, the common misuse of yoga to Thai yoga, and therefore, even though intellectually they understand that they have to use, they're supposed to rock with they're supposed to keep the up direction of the head for best postural balance, so that the practitioner allows the alignment of the seven energy centers to be, what it's supposed to be. I've seen practitioners who round their back and who you're supposed to use your body weight and release into the persons you're working with and away,
Mm-hmm.
but if you and the teachers tell us you have to make sure you keep your arms straight, because the minute you start bending, then you round your back and you're not connected to the earth anymore, and so the quality of the work is very different. But it's one, as you know, it's one thing to know it intellectually and to agree with it. It's another to be able to put it into your practice, whether it's yoga or Thai yoga, if you don't have that experience, you cannot do something with yoga and Thai yoga that you're not doing in your everyday life.
Right, and I think, I mean, I guess I have worked a lot with massage therapists and
Mm-hmm.
with physical therapists, both of whom have to do a lot of physical work, and there's a both of those professions have pretty high burnout rates.
Yeah.
I have a colleague who's a PT, and as he points out, there are not a lot of old physical therapists around because they don't survive. And massage therapists just have classic problems with their wrists and their arms and their shoulders and so on. And really what helps them, both those two categories, and so I would imagine also would be true for Thai yoga therapists, is they need some direct hands-on guidance to show them how they can apply pressure if that's what they want to do, or in the case of PTs, often lifting or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, do that without compromising their own, I guess you could call it physical integrity and their
Mm-hmm.
own,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah, and
I would guess, I mean, from the way you described Thai yoga, the recipient is pretty passive, so someone else is doing the work,
y-
and that person
excuse me.
has got to be looking after themselves to make sure they're not doing unnecessary work.
Yeah, and the guidance, if you have a good teacher, and the teacher of my teacher was Kam Tai Chow, and he has a school in Montreal. His website is lotuspalm.com, and if you look at his books, I mean, his use in all those pictures is amazing,
Hmm.
and in everything he says, you can see that he's got it and he's teaching it. The
Hmm.
question is, are people getting it? Honestly, I've given workshops to massage therapists, and I've seen in what shape they can be, which is why I chose Thai yoga. I didn't want to be just a regular massage therapist. I felt Thai yoga had already within it a lot of what I like with Alexander, and that they could work hand in hand. And I even have in mind, I don't know if I told you I was working on writing my book.
Hmm.
And of course there will be a chapter on yoga and Thai yoga and the Alexander technique. And I was even thinking of maybe at some point offering Kam Tai Chao, write something and send it to him, and possibly start giving Alexander workshop for Thai yoga practitioners,
Hmm.
so that they practice Thai yoga the way it's designed to be practiced,
Hmm. Hmm.
but by understanding that some of those components can only be practiced with Thai yoga if you integrate them in your everyday movement and activities.
Hmm. We're kind of coming probably towards the end of our conversation, but I did have another related topic that maybe it would be worth touching on very briefly, and that is that I have found, and from talking to other Alexander teachers who also have another specialty like yoga or like Tai
Mhm.
Chi. Those are the two that
Mhm.
kind of jump to mind.
Mhm.
That when the topic of how the Alexander technique can help with those processes,
Mhm.
they are sometimes met with a very strong resistance in the sense that those processes are conceived of as being kind of self-contained, and you don't need another thing to make it better. I know for sure that's been the case with Tai Chi a couple of times, and I would guess probably with some forms of yoga too. And I'm wondering how you would address that if it ever were to come up in your field.
Well, I mean, of course, it has come up, and I mean, I trained with a lot of people who were yoga teachers. I have friends who are yoga teachers. They're all over,
Right.
and I actually I haven't done past few months, but I do go to a yoga class sometimes, and I've never gotten hurt, even though it's a type of yoga that a lot of people say they get hurt, but I don't get hurt because I'm using my Alexander.
Hmm.
And but so the thing is, I did, and my teacher, I did try to offer her a trade. I figured, that could be good for both of us, but it wasn't taken up.
Hmm. Right.
and
Right.
and the thing is, the problem is often people start feeling like they've become a master at what they're doing, and they don't want advice from anybody else except their own teachers.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because really it's not, there's no competition between Alexander and yoga. It's just that Alexander is preliminary to any activity.
Hmm.
And when people are open to learning Alexander, they're going to do everything else better, including practicing or teaching yoga. And I've had
Hmm.
yoga people who were open because they were in so much pain. And once they integrated the Alexander technique, they were able to do their yoga pain free. And that's a big thing. But
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
can't, people have to be exposed to it, and they have to be ready to embrace it. And if they're so sure that their way of doing it is the best way, then that's where they're going to be. um, but when you go into a yoga class and you see half the people twisting from the wrong angle,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I have to not look. When I
Right.
go, I just
Right.
have to focus on my own practice.
Right.
And it's too bad because, and also the other problem is, it's so popular that they have rooms so packed that the teacher, even if they had the awareness, it would be very hard for them to come and put hands on everyone who needs it.
Right. Right.
So my solution would be for every yoga center to have an Alexander Technique teacher helping, because yoga teachers recognize that the people in the room don't always use their body the way it's intended to be used, but
Hmm.
they don't, they just say, well, we don't have time to put hands on. But one good solution would be to have an Alexander Technique teacher who could teach people how to use their body, so they go in yoga and they use their body without hurting themselves, and
Hmm.
or creating more trouble.
Right. And to be completely fair, the Alexander technique world has plenty of its own arrogance
Oh, absolutely.
regarding other forms. It's not. I
Absolutely.
didn't mean really my previous statement to pick on Tai Chi or yoga. I mean,
No, no, I
Alexander
understand.
teachers can sometimes be pretty close-minded about other
Yes.
methods, and
Yes.
I could certainly imagine some Alexander teachers I know who would
Hmm.
benefit from all sorts of other things,
Yes.
yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates, whatever,
Hmm.
but who might reject them out of hand
Exactly.
because some idea that the Alexander technique in and of itself takes care of everything. Anyway, um, I think this might be a good place to bring our conversation to an end, unless there's something you're absolutely dying to say at this point.
Yeah, I think we forgot to say one little important detail,
Uh huh.
which is that that Thai yoga was started by Jivaka Kumar, who was the physician of the Buddha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
so
the
that,
lineage, that's a nice lineage, right?
yes, yes,
All
yes.
right. So um, my guest today has been Cecile Rayner, who's an Alexander Technique teacher and a certified Thai yoga therapist in Brookline, Massachusetts. And if you live in the Boston area, we'll put a link to her website. If you live anywhere else in the world, we'll put a link to a site that has additional information about the Alexander technique. And if there's kind of a meta site for Thai yoga, you'll let me know, and I'll put that by the interview as well. Cecile, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me to do this.